Hi ladies, I wanted to share a strategy that you might consider using in your point of view units. One of your learning targets talks about the students being able to identify first and third person point of view using pronouns. One thing that I have discovered is I try to make it too black and white for kids when I teach. And sometimes kids get confused. So to explain what I mean, if we're looking at this text right here, what I did was I went through and I highlighted all or almost all the pronouns. I'm not sure if I got all of them. Although you can see that most of them are I or me, which would indicate a first person point of view, there are still some she's in there. And while you and I understand why those she's are in there, that does confuse students because they're seeing both I, which indicates first person point of view, and she, which indicates third person point of view. So what I'm saying is within one text, you could have multiple pronouns, some of which are first person point of view pronouns, and others that are third person point of view pronouns. So when teaching this, we have to teach it at a deeper level to get in a way that gets kids thinking about the narrator and how the narrator is telling the story. So one strategy that you could use, and I'll share this document with you, is right here. I plan to make a copy of this and I'll use it within small groups. The strategy is right here. It's just kind of a three-step strategy. So first I'm going to ask them to choose a passage where there is very little dialogue. I'm doing that because when there is dialogue, sometimes there is often the same confusion of sometimes it's he said, she said, or I said. An example would be right about here where it says at the top, it says, "Thanks, Mom. That's not very reassuring," I said, etc. And then if you look a couple of lines down, it says, "She said." So again, we know that how it's used is indicative of what type of point of view it is, but students don't always know that because they think it's black and white. If it's I, me, and pronouns like that, it's first person, or if it's she, he, they, it's third person. So we want to choose a part of the text where there's very little dialogue so that confusion is less likely to happen. So for example, this first paragraph here, there's no dialogue. And so that's an example that I'm going to model the strategy with. So I chose my passage, just that first passage, or the first paragraph of that passage I just showed you. Ask yourself, what does the narrator say is happening to the main character? So if we go back to that paragraph, it says, "During the week before school started this year, I suddenly got really nervous. It took me a couple of days to figure out the butterflies in my stomach were due to anxiety about school. I've always been very good at academics, so I just didn't think I could possibly be afraid of the start of another year. But this year I was beginning middle school, 7th grade, and all I felt was dread." So I'd want the students to say, well, the narrator is explaining that the main character is typically excited about school. However, this year she's going into 7th grade and she's nervous and dreading it. I'm asking this question because I want them to begin thinking about how the narrator is telling the story and through whose eyes the narrator is telling the story. So that leads us to the last question, which is, does the narrator use the character's name and I probably need to word this differently, but the character's name, or he, she, them, her, or does the narrator use I, me, my, or we in the passage that we just read? So if you go back to the passage that we just read, the character is I. We don't know the character's name. The narrator uses the pronoun I when describing what's going on to the character in this particular point in the story. So that would allow the students to see that the narrator is using first person point of view. So again, the point of this is so we're not so kids don't think that it's just black and white, that they really have to think about first person and third person point of view through the way in which the narrator tells the story, which is later we're gonna compare and contrast the point of view in stories, and that's gonna make that learning target easier if we're already talking about how the narrator tells a story with this learning target here. So I hope this helps. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm happy to come in and model a lesson or talk to you about this if you would like. If you don't need this and you've already taught something similar, that's totally fine too. Thanks, ladies.